We are joined by Phil Steele. Most of you know him because of the incredibly comprehensive magazine that he puts out every year for college football and for the NFL. If you haven't picked up a copy, by the way, go get one. But this is a guy who has been writing about college football for a very long time. And let's jump into the Razorbacks. They've got a lot of experience coming back, and I think that all hinges on KJ. So when you look at the quarterback position, what do you think he can do to set himself apart this year in the SEC?
Well, I think what you're going to see more out of KJ this year is throwing the football. The offense is
Yeah.
changing a little bit. You're going to see some more downfield throws, and you might consider that a question mark, losing four wide receivers like they did. But when I talked to Coach Pittman and went over the squad, he said he was happy with the wide receiver room, and KJ was happy with the wide receiver room. So that made me feel more comfortable. They're solid at the backup spot with Criswell and Fortin, but KJ's a guy who's 6'2", 246 pounds. He's the leader of the team. It's a new pro style offense. I'm expecting big things out of him. I think he'll be one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC and one of the best quarterbacks in the country this year. And defenses can't key just on KJ, not with Rocket Sanders in the backfield.
That's been one of the biggest topics. You have that two-headed monster and maybe one of the best Razorback or one of the best running back and quarterback duos in KJ and Rocket.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that really helps the offense. And like I said, before I talked to Coach Pittman, I was a little concerned about the receiver position, the fact they lose their top four guys from last year. But adding in a guy like Andrew Armstrong from A&M and others, they feel good about the receiver position. So I feel good about it.
We went out to practice today, and I tell you, Davion Dozier and Marion Crockett look good. These wide receivers are passing the eye test, so that was really good to see. And I know that Luke Haas at the tight end position is going to be another one that people are going to circle. When you look at Dan Enos coming back, and we've known what he's done with the tight end position in the past, specifically at Arkansas, how much do you think they're going to utilize that position a little bit more?
Yeah, and Coach Pittman told me that they're going to be predominantly 11, but that they will use the 12 personnel more this year, and they can. You know, you look at the fact that you talked about Luke Haas, and then they add in Gums coming in from North Texas. I think is a nice addition. Nathan Bax is there, and these are good sized tight ends. They're not your just H backs. These are guys that can block and receive. So I think they're in solid shape there, and I'm looking for 12 personnel, maybe 30% of the time this year.
What about their offensive line? Because they're not going to have any success if they don't have success up front.
Well, the good news is they got some guy, Sam Pittman, there. And going back to his days at Georgia, Sam Pittman has always developed an outstanding offensive line. They've got two really good guys back in Bo Limmer at center and Brady Latham coming back there at the left guard spot. They had in Josh Brown from Florida, which is a nice addition to have. The tackles are probably the biggest question because there's two new guys. And Kutas was a guy that was recruited as a defensive tackle and has moved to offensive tackle.
Mhm.
But these guys are both quality guys. And with Pittman there, I rank the Arkansas's offensive lines in my top offensive line units in the magazine, mostly because Sam Pittman's there and always develops a solid offensive line.
Man, I hope you are right about that. Let's switch to the defensive side of the ball because I just think there's so many more questions there with a new defensive coordinator and Travis Williams and all of the questions and issues that it had specifically in the secondary last year. And so, what are your keys in that group that they have to improve on to be better this year?
You know, I think the one thing that's going to really help out the secondary this year, Alyssa, is the defensive end pass rush. When I talked to Coach Pittman, he told me they were loaded at defensive end. Guys like Trajan Jeffcoat, Landon Jackson, Nico DeValier, Jashad Stewart. They're just absolutely loaded. So I think they get a lot of pressure on the QB. Remember, Jeffcoat's a guy that was a stud at Missouri,
Mhm.
and it's really good to have him there. And they're also better at tackle. Last year, they only went three deep at tackle at times, but now they've got some big boys in there. They got a true freshman that weighs like 370 and a bunch of 300 pounders. So I think that the defensive front is going to be the key to this year's defense being better. Get more pressure on the quarterback, slow down the run game, and that's going to help out the secondary, help out the linebacking core. And they got a couple solid additions at linebacker, like
Mhm.
Antonio Greer coming in from USF.
Yeah, I was about to say that leads me into my next question because there is no more bumper pool, believe it or not, on this roster.
He's
Feels
been
like he
there
was here
forever, huh?
forever, about at least 5 or 6 years for sure. There's no Grant Morgan anymore, and there's no Hudson Henry or Hayden Henry anymore. So you've got Chris Paul, who had some experience a little bit last year in games, specifically late after Bumper got hurt. But Greer's a great addition. Jordan Crook is another guy that they're really high on too. So I'm really curious about that squad and what they're going to look like.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw the nickel back in that position as well because it's such a key part of the defense. You got a guy like Al Walcott coming in from Baylor who's going to play that hog position, so I think that's a big plus. Chris Paul is he's fast, he's physical, he's got good speed, and I think he's going to be able to get after the quarterback as well. They had in a Cincinnati transfer in Jaheim Thomas, so I think overall when you look at the linebacking core, it's going to be better than expected. And there were concerns in my mind after the season was over for Arkansas with the losses they had at linebacker, but I like the additions through the portal this year.
I think they really did a good job. And I want to get your opinion on this. I was having a conversation with another writer at practice today, and this feels like a Sam Pittman roster. We're heading into year 4. It just feels like we're going to be more physical. We're going to play a lot more of a ground and pound kind of football style. What are you seeing when you look at this roster?
Yeah, and you talk about being physical, they did not live tackle in the spring last year, but they did so this year. So I think that's going to help them out. I agree with you 100%. Sam Pittman is in his 4th year. It's basically all his recruits right now, all his type of players coming in, and I think they'll fit that mold. So I would agree with that statement 100%.
But there's a gauntlet of the SEC West they got to get through
Uh,
too. How do you how do you think that this Arkansas team can handle the rest of the West?
I think it's going to be your typical Arkansas season. Nice start to the season. I look for them to open up 3-0. But, Alyssa, that is the toughest 4-game schedule of any team in the country. It's not even close. You're talking about 4 games all away from home against what I rate the top 4 teams
Mhm.
in the SEC West. You're looking at LSU, A&M, Alabama, and Old Miss, all in back-to-back-to-back weeks. I think that's going to be tough to even steal 1 or 2 wins in that stretch. But a nice finish to the season should do well. So I look for a good start, a great finish, and let's hope they can bag an upset or two. But that's a grueling stretch. I can't imagine any other team in the country. And when naturally I go through all 133 teams, there's not another team that comes even close to 4 road games against the top 4 teams in the SEC West.
Yeah, we don't plan on unpacking our bags during that whole entire stretch. We're just going to bounce from place to place. But if history repeats itself at all, it always feels like the season is always defined by that Texas A&M win or loss, and it's been a loss more than it has been a win. But how big is that game against A&M in Arlington?
Oh, it's huge. And go back to last year. I thought Arkansas was in control of the game. KJ stretches out, fumble, 97-yard return for a touchdown. Probably changed the entire game, and Arkansas never recovered from that. If they avoid something like that, I thought they controlled the game last year. Now I'm very high on A&M, so I think that's going to be a great game. I've got A&M as my most improved team in the country, but that's every year. That's a great game, isn't it, Alyssa?
Oh, everyone talks about it, and then you add Bobby Petrino back to the mix, and this is going to be one of those games that I think Arkansas fans have circled on their calendar if they don't already.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Well, thank you so much, Phil. It's always nice to catch up with you. Good to see you again. We're looking forward to this season, and of course, we always appreciate your insight.
Hey, a lot of fun talking football with you today, Alyssa.
Thanks. You too.